The real authority is going to be real with you. He has not been a fan of the MCU since like Phase 4. It is shocking how much of a decline the MCU has taken post Endgame. It is almost historic, but not really. What was once the biggest movie franchise in history is still the biggest movie franchise in history, but there have been more claims that the MCU has fallen off ever since reaching its peak. And I guess it's because of the increased output, and such an increase means decreasing quality, which was something that I think a lot of people noticed. We got more MCU content, and not all of them were allowed to breathe. After watching the first season of I Am Groot, I only really watched the projects I cared about, and there are not a lot of them. However, I have decided to give the MCU a second chance, so I consider 2025 to be the make or break year for Marvel. I'm not going to talk about the TV shows because I didn't watch them. I'll probably rewatch them in preparation for Doomsday because, duh. So I only paid attention to the 3 movies, Captain America Brave New World, Thunderbolts, and the topic of today's discussion, the Fantastic Four First Steps. I actually enjoyed the previous 2 films for different reasons. I understand if Captain America Brave New World isn't your thing, and I wouldn't go out to say it's a great movie. It's just an enjoyable MCU offering. Thunderbolts, on the other hand, that came out of literally nowhere and kind of re-sparked this excitement that I haven't had for a long time with the MCU. And I actually started to get afraid because one of the trends I noticed, especially post Endgame, was that the MCU was only able to really come out with one amazing film each year. So I was convinced that Thunderbolts would be where the MCU peaked in 2025. So I was getting nervous for the Fantastic Four First Steps. No amount of early reaction buzz that was positive could really get my doubts out because I usually don't trust early reactions. I'm not sure if I said this in another video, but sometimes the early reactions are glowing and the film just turns out to be not as good as people are saying. So I kind of had to fear that Fantastic Four would be the same thing. I was still hopeful because the trailers made it seem like a homage to the old days of the Fantastic Four, but also to the 1950s. Not far off from when the Fantastic Four actually debuted, so I think its retro aesthetic was going to be great from the off. I was just really hoping that the project would also stand on its own 2 feet instead of feeling like Marvel trying too hard, because it feels like outside Doomsday, the MCU is kind of relying on this film to succeed in order to determine whether or not the MCU can move on like this. Maybe my doubts increased when the director announced that they cut out John Malkovich. Malkovich is a good actor, but it's more indicative of the bigger problem with the MCU, which is constant reshoots, constant editing, which tracks in a lot of their projects. So I was hoping that this film would not fall into that, because it would honestly suck. Oh, I even forgot to mention the previous Fantastic Four projects. I'll be brief since I talked too much about the MCU. Haven't seen the infamous first one, saw the 2000s movies, they were decent. Couldn't even finish 2015 when I saw it, and that was back in a time when I was a lot less critical, so the fact that I turned it off it says a lot. Which gave the MCU the toughest task of their entire lifespan, to actually make a great Fantastic Four movie, because if it sucked, I think that would have probably killed the MCU on sight, but because of how good Thunderbolts was, I don't think it would have ended the franchise on the off, although Thunderbolts box office is tragic. Either way, I'm going off on a bit of a tangent that's not related to Fantastic Four First Steps, so I might as well talk about it. Galactus has chosen Earth as his next feeding ground, and so the Fantastic Four must stand up in order to protect their planet while also trying to adapt to having a new member of the family. On the off, the acting's really good. Granted, they cast a lot of pretty talented actors in here. I mean, Pedro Pascal is one of the biggest stars in Hollywood right now, but it didn't really feel like in the final product he was like misunderstanding the role or anything. Pedro is the best choice for Reed Richards, especially with this film. So it was really nice to see him bring emotional gravitas to the role. Like, there were some moments where I was like, damn, Pedro, you're actually giving a pretty great performance here. Vanessa Kirby, too, as Sue Storm. I was really impressed with what she did as well. Then again, they're great actors, so I shouldn't be, but they still clock into work. If I were to give my favorite of the 4, Joseph Quinn as the Human Torch, man, he was so entertaining. Like, he doesn't feel like forced comedic relief. I'm going to mention the comedy in a few, but whenever he made jokes, it actually fit the story incredibly well. So he's my favorite character out of the 4, and perhaps my favorite of the entire film. Eben Moss-Bachrach as the Thing was also incredibly strong with great CGI as well. entertaining when he needs to be, but also emotional. I really did enjoy his performance. So they were perfectly cast, and they have amazing chemistry. Other standouts include Julia Garner as the Silver Surfer. I know a lot of controversy is surrounding her casting and her portrayal of the character. With Garner, she delivers a pretty strong and commanding performance, even overshadowing the main villain Galactus. Get to him in a second. I mean, she's pretty much proven herself to be a rising talent, even though she's been in the game for a long time. Wolfman, she gave an incredible performance. I'm pretty sure Weapon, she's going to kill it. So yeah, she definitely worked for the role. Honestly, I love Ralph Ineson in anything I see him in. His voice acting as Galactus was really strong, but then again, he's talented too. I love the man whenever I see him. He is incredibly underrated. Matt Shakman also had pretty effective and remarkable directing. He absolutely makes this world and universe, since I don't know if you've heard, this is kind of in the MCU, but kind of not. But Matt Shakman makes it feel lived in, makes it feel gorgeous in a lot of places. And sure, like a lot of other movies that I've mentioned, I usually mention the cinematographer because Jess Hall also did amazing work with her cinematography in this movie. But both of them do a pretty amazing job at making this world and movie look beautiful, so I gotta give them credit. Also, Michael Giacchino, I think I may be a fan of him, but then again, he just does such a great job with the music. In any project he has done. Like, whenever he makes a score, he usually makes it stand out and stand out in the best ways possible, making it memorable. And you know what? I think he was the perfect choice for this soundtrack. He absolutely composes the hell out of this movie, and there is no way I'm leaving him without a mention. Michael Giacchino is the GOAT. One of the most praised composers of our era, and you know what? It is well deserved. I'd also be remiss if I didn't mention the costume designs. Alexandra Byrne absolutely makes the costumes feel retro, which I gotta say, I did appreciate how much the movie took the 50s aesthetic that they were hinting at with the promotional material and just ran with it. This doesn't feel like a movie of our era a lot of the time, which I did appreciate because it makes this movie feel different in all the best ways. Screenplay is also surprisingly strong. Like Thunderbolts before it shockingly deals a lot with topics that I don't think the MCU has dealt with before. I'm not going to go into it because of spoilers, but it's pretty much an internal conflict, especially given Galactus and him threatening Earth with his planet-eating abilities. So Josh Friedman, Eric Pearson, Jeff Kaplan, and Ian Springer really brought surprising emotional depth while also balancing comedy in a pretty effective way. Balancing's probably the wrong word. This isn't like your typical MCU movie where it has a lot of humor. Sure, Human Torch may have a lot of quips, but I do think when the movie's serious, it really lets the seriousness breathe. Maybe there's a quick joke here or there, but it's quick. It's not wait for the audience to laugh. They didn't laugh. Shoot. Not a criticism, but this is one of those MCU films, one of the rare ones that feels like it's a slow burn rather than actually doing stuff. But I do feel with its commitment to the 50s aesthetic and more emotional parts of this story, I do think it works for this movie. Like, if you're expecting a typical MCU movie with like a fast pace, like it gets going right away, you're not exactly going to get that, but I really did feel like it worked. But you're also introducing these characters for the first time, which another positive, this movie, you do not need to do any MCU homework, which is shocking. Like, I feel like with Captain America Brave New World, you absolutely kind of have to do homework, and I said that in my review on IMDb, I believe. No, I said there's no real need to do homework. But as an MCU fan, you've most likely seen the prior projects, same with Thunderbolts. However, with Thunderbolts, you don't exactly need to watch the other MCU movies, so that's cool, I guess. But you would benefit by watching the other ones. With Fantastic Four First Steps, you actually do not need to do anything. They've only been mentioned in like the post-credit scene of Thunderbolts, and that's about it. So it's maybe one post-credit scene that sets up the future of their characters and their involvement in the MCU. For the most part, this movie does not need to be watched with any prior knowledge. This is one of the first MCU projects in a really long time where you can just go in casually or blind and you'll be invested. That is a compliment that I have not given to any MCU project, I think, in years. That's because they've been focusing on characters that they've either set up in prior projects or characters that they brought over from the first three phases. Here they're brand new and you don't really need to watch anything beforehand, so yeah. I'm not going to forget the CGI. Of course, in the MCU, most movies contain pretty amazing CGI, and here, there was not really any glitches. The MCU has not been this strong, at least film output-wise, in a really long time. Even though, again, I concede Brave New World is not the best movie out there. So I'm only going to base it on Thunderbolts and the Fantastic Four First Steps. As I said toward the start of the video, they really only are capable of making one truly amazing movie per year. So the fact that we have two is kind of proof that the MCU has messed up and they need to try to lock in. I was afraid that Fantastic Four First Steps would prove to be a disappointment. It wasn't. It may be different from other MCU projects, but it's intentionally being that. It doesn't want to be associated with the MCU, at least in the ways of being similar to other projects. It really wants to stand on its own. And this is the first time in a long time that an MCU project can actually stand on its own. I am really happy that even though I had doubts beforehand, they were quickly quelled by how pretty incredible this film was. The Real Authority, even though I shouldn't have been surprised, approves 10 out of 10. This is the first time in a long time that I've actually been excited for the MCU, so I'm really glad of that. But yeah, hell yeah. Okay, I'm going to end it there. Let me know what you thought about Fantastic Four First Steps in the comments below. I am blown away by how great it was. If you like this video, make sure you leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications to make sure you stay tuned to my other videos, and you can check out the videos I've already had. Alright, I am going to end it there. Peace.